Goldilocks sighed deeply, her breath echoing the emptiness she felt inside. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day that begged for adventure and play outside. The sun's rays danced through the window, casting playful shadows on the floor. But she was stuck inside, confined to the four walls of her room. She had already played with all her toys. The once exciting and colorful collection of dolls, cars, and puzzles now seemed mundane and lifeless. Each toy had been explored, every game had been played, and there was nothing new to discover. Even her favorite doll, the one with the golden curls and the pretty blue dress, seemed boring today. She held it in her hands, but it brought her no joy. The doll's painted smile felt like a mockery of her own boredom. "I'm so bored," Goldilocks grumbled, her voice filled with frustration. She had never felt this restless before. The minutes seemed to stretch into hours, and the hours into an eternity. She looked around her room, searching for something, anything to do. Her eyes scanned the familiar surroundings, hoping to find a spark of inspiration. The walls, the furniture, everything seemed to close in on her, amplifying her sense of confinement. Her eyes fell on a stack of books in the corner of the room. They were piled high, a mix of fairy tales, adventure stories, and picture books. Normally, she loved getting lost in their pages, but today, even the thought of reading felt tiresome. Goldilocks loved stories, the way they could transport her to magical lands and introduce her to fascinating characters. But today, even the books seemed dull. The vibrant covers and intriguing titles did nothing to stir her imagination. She decided to build a tower instead. If she couldn't escape into a story, maybe she could create something with her hands. The idea sparked a small flicker of excitement within her. Carefully, she stacked the books, one on top of the other. She started with the largest books at the bottom, creating a sturdy base. As she added more books, she had to balance them just right to keep the tower from toppling over. Higher and higher the tower grew until it almost reached the ceiling. Goldilocks stood back and admired her creation. It was a magnificent structure, a testament to her patience and creativity. For a moment, she forgot her boredom and felt a sense of accomplishment. The Tower of Books stood tall and proud, a symbol of her ability to find joy and purpose, even on the dullest of days. Suddenly, the top book on the tower started to shake. Goldilocks gasped. She had been in the library many times before, but never had she seen anything like this. The book seemed to be alive, trembling as if it had a mind of its own. Goldilocks took a step back, her eyes wide with astonishment. What could be causing this strange phenomenon? She wondered if she was dreaming, but the scene before her was all too real. The book was moving. It had tiny, shimmering wings. Goldilocks couldn't believe her eyes. The wings were delicate, like those of a butterfly, and they glowed with a soft, magical light. She reached out a hand, almost afraid to touch it, but the book flapped its wings and lifted off the shelf. It hovered in the air for a moment as if deciding where to go next. Before Goldilocks could blink, the book fluttered off the tower. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for an object made of paper and ink. Goldilocks watched in awe as it ascended higher and higher, its wings beating rhythmically. She felt a strange connection to the book, as if it was calling to her, inviting her to follow. It soared through the air, its pages rustling like excited whispers. The sound was enchanting, like a secret being shared among friends. Goldilocks felt a thrill of excitement. She had always loved books, but this was something entirely different. This book was alive, and it seemed to have a story of its own to tell. She couldn't resist the urge to find out more. Goldilocks, filled with curiosity, ran after the magical book. She had no idea where it was leading her, but she didn't care. The adventure was too enticing to pass up. She darted through the library, her heart pounding with excitement. The book flew ahead, always just out of reach, as if it was playing a game with her. The book led her out of the house and into the forest. The trees loomed tall and mysterious, their leaves rustling in the breeze. Goldilocks had never ventured this far before, but the book's glowing wings were like a beacon, guiding her through the unfamiliar terrain. She felt a sense of wonder and anticipation, as if she was on the brink of discovering something extraordinary. Goldilocks followed, her golden curls bouncing, her heart filled with wonder. She had always been curious by nature, and this magical book was the most intriguing thing she had ever encountered. She wondered where it was taking her and what secrets it held. The forest seemed to come alive around her, the air filled with the scent of pine and the sound of birdsong. She had never seen a book fly before. It was like something out of a fairy tale, and she felt like the heroine of her own story. The book's wings shimmered in the sunlight, casting a magical glow on everything around it. Goldilocks knew that this was a moment she would never forget. She was on the cusp of an adventure, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The book led Goldilocks deep into the forest, finally landing near a cozy little cottage. 3 goats, a mama goat, a papa goat, and a little goat sat outside looking sad. "Excuse me," Goldilocks said politely. "My name is Goldilocks. Why are you so sad?" The little goat sniffled. "We lost our favorite book," he bleated. "It has stories and poems and beautiful pictures. We love to read together," sighed the mama goat. "Reading makes us happy." Goldilocks felt sorry for the goats. She loved books too. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll help you find your book." And so Goldilocks set off on a forest adventure. She followed winding paths, crossed babbling brooks, and climbed over moss-covered rocks. She looked everywhere, but the lost book was nowhere to be found. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Goldilocks, tired but determined, knew she had to keep searching. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with sounds. Owls hooted, crickets chirped, and the trees, Goldilocks realized, were whispering. "Have you seen a lost book?" she asked a willow tree, its branches drooping low. "Follow the stream," whispered the willow. "It will lead you to what you seek." Goldilocks followed the willow's advice. She walked along the stream, listening to its gentle music. Finally, exhausted, Goldilocks curled up at the foot of a giant oak tree. She hugged the winged book close. As she drifted off to sleep, she wished with all her heart that she could find the goat family's book. In her dreams, the winged book came to life. Its pages turned, revealing magical stories and talking animals. Goldilocks laughed and danced with the creatures from the book, her heart filled with joy. When Goldilocks woke up, the sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the entire forest. The morning light filtered through the leaves, creating a beautiful mosaic of light and shadow on the forest floor. She stretched and yawned, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun on her face. It was a perfect morning, the kind that made you feel like anything was possible. And something amazing had happened. As she looked around, she noticed tiny magical sparkles dancing in the air, as if the forest itself was celebrating. The air was filled with a sense of wonder and excitement, and Goldilocks couldn't help but feel that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Right next to her lay the goat family's lost book. It was an old, ornate book with glowing pages, lying in the grass as if it had been waiting for her to find it. The book seemed to radiate a soft, magical light, and Goldilocks could feel its importance just by looking at it. She could tell it was the right one because it had a picture of a goat family on the cover. The image was beautifully illustrated, showing a happy family of goats, each with a unique expression that made them look almost alive. Goldilocks knew that this book was special, and she felt a surge of excitement at the thought of reuniting it with its rightful owners. Just then, she heard the sound of hooves approaching. The rhythmic clopping grew louder, echoing through the forest. Goldilocks looked up, her heart pounding with anticipation. Who could it be? She wondered, her eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. It was the goat family. They emerged from the trees, their faces lighting up with joy as they spotted Goldilocks. The goats ran towards her, their hooves barely making a sound on the soft forest floor. It was a heartwarming sight, and Goldilocks felt a wave of happiness wash over her. They were overjoyed to see Goldilocks and their precious book. The goats surrounded her, their eyes shining with gratitude and relief. Goldilocks held out the book, and the goats' faces lit up even more. It was a magical moment filled with joy and a sense of reunion. "You found it!" cried the little goat, his eyes wide with amazement. "But how?" Goldilocks smiled and explained how she had stumbled upon the book while exploring the forest. She told them about the magical sparkles and the sense of wonder that had led her to their lost treasure. The goats listened intently, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. It was a joyful reunion, one that none of them would ever forget. Goldilocks, still a bit sleepy, explained about the whispers of the willow tree and the magic of the winged book. "The book led me to your book," she said with a smile. "I think it wanted us to be friends." The goat family invited Goldilocks back to their cottage. They sat together, reading their favorite stories and poems from the lost book. Laughter filled the air as they shared the magic of reading. From that day on, Goldilocks and the goat family became the best of friends. They often met in the forest to read together. Goldilocks learned that reading wasn't boring at all. It was a magical adventure, full of surprises and wonder, and she learned something even more important: the joy of sharing a good book with friends. Because some things, like stories and friendship, are always better together.